Hello, hello, hello. Is there anyone out there? I'm now live. In this video and this stream, we're going to be reading some spooky stories. And since Halloween is coming up soon, I think I'm going to try to do more of these kinds of streams in the near future. So just bear with me a bit while I get everything set up. If you're watching this when it's not live, feel free to fast forward, perhaps by a few minutes or so, because I also want to sort of give people time to get here before we get into the actual reading of the stories. Now, I don't know how long I'm going to be live today because I am very exhausted yet again. That's because my body doesn't want to sleep during the night and be awake during the day. So I've had to sort of force myself to be awake again. But I think I'll be alright. This sounds good. Okay. I'm going to test this one more time. Can't believe the stream sounds good. Test this one more time. Can't believe the stream sounds good. Alright. We're sounding good. And I'm just going to tweet that I'm live. And we will get into the reading of the spooky stories here very soon. Give people maybe another minute or two to show up as I tweet that I am live. It is like almost freezing here right now, it seems. Maybe it's the paranormal energy moving in. I don't know. Alright, so I am live on YouTube reading, should I say, reading spooky paranormal stories. Come watch. Tweet that. Now I'm yawning because, like I said, I'm tired. Live on YouTube reading spooky paranormal stories. Come watch. It's looking good. We'll begin here in just a moment or two. Whether there are many people here or not. Okay, that's good. Alright, here we go. Today I have the other window positioned in such a way that I can still kind of see myself, and I can definitely see the chat at the same time that I'm reading the article I've got here. And hopefully this drink keeps me awake. I think what I might do is have this stream, even if it's kind of brief, and then go get something to eat, maybe get a bit of a nap, and then come back later and do another stream either like this or about something else, but we'll just have to see. But anyway, oh, hi Chris, that sounds interesting, strange story. I would like to hear that, mister. Do you want to tell it in the chat, or do you want to like email it to me or something? So let's see. Yes, I'm here on Mysterious Universe, and this article or series of stories, perhaps, whatever you want to call it, is called Creepy Encounters with Underground Humanoid Monsters, and it's by Brent Swanser. So let's go ahead and start this up. Is everything in order? Yes, it is. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of like when I did this before, I'm going to read, and then I'm going to take breaks to interact with the chat. So I hope everyone is okay with that format, because that's how I plan to do it. All right. Creepy Encounters with Underground Humanoid Monsters by Brent Swanser. There is perhaps no creepier place than a long, winding tunnel or cave leading off into the darkness, into the confines of the earth. It instills some sort of primal dread in us, a fear we cannot escape, and leaves us to wonder just where that dim passageway leads and what things lie within it. Of course, considering the spooky nature of the tunnels, caverns, sewers, and other subterranean places of our world, there are bound to be tales of something weird pacing about in those places beneath our feet, and there are plenty. Some of the most spectacular and bizarre of reports of underground monsters have to do with beings and beasts that are somewhat humanoid in nature, prowling about down there in the depths and beyond our understanding. Wait, let's check this out. It was an alien sighting around my house a couple of nights ago, and 3 nights before that, we were having prowlers leaving a mess in my driveway. Bricks inside, or cars and bricks outside. Oh wow, an alien? Tell us more if you can. Like what all did you see? Like, what did this alien look like? Or did you get a good look at it? And prowlers, I'm sorry to hear that. All right, back to the article. Hang on a second. A very odd case of something odd lurking in dank underground tunnels has sort of an urban legend vibe to it, but is persistent enough to warrant a look. For this one, we go to the U.S. state of South Carolina, deep down into the service tunnels that spread out under the University of South Carolina, some of which date back to the 1800s, and which have long been said to be the haunt of something less than human. Sightings of something bizarre lurking down there begin in November of 1949, when a student of the university by the name of Christopher Nichols was walking along in front of Longstreet Theater one evening when he was startled by a humanoid figure wearing a quote-unquote silver suit, who crossed the street, opened a manhole cover, and disappeared down into the tunnels below. When it hit the school newspaper, the Gamecock, they called it the Sewer Man, but this would not be the last sighting of whatever it was. In April of 1950, a police officer was in the area when he had a rather frightening encounter of his own. As he went about his patrol in the same vicinity of the original sighting, he came across a pile of what looked like the discarded remains of dead chickens, still bloody, that had been mauled and mutilated by some animal. As he ran his flashlight over the scene, the beam caught the sight of a hunched-over figure decked out in a silver suit in the shadows, which was described as having gray skin and being grotesque in appearance. And most oddly of all, the officer reported that the thing had a third eye right in the center of its forehead. The humanoid creature allegedly scowled at the police officer and scurried down into the tunnel system below, leaving behind its macabre stash of mangled chickens. Creepy. Let's see here. Not for sure it was an alien or not. It was more like a human animal-like creature that was causing the problems around my house. Prowlers that made a strange noise. Asked him or her who you are. I don't know if it was an alien or not. Our pranksters. It was very strange indeed. It scared me out of my wits as I was locking my driveway gate. Ooh, that is scary. Yeah, I mean, I guess that it's hard to say. Maybe it was just pranksters or someone, Halloween's coming up. People are wanting to do scary things, but you never know. They say as it gets closer to Halloween, the veil becomes thinner. You never know what strange creatures might poke through from other dimensions, other realities. Now let us resume the article. The strange denizen of the tunnels would gain the name the Third Eye Man, and sightings would continue into the 1960s and 70s, with one particularly harrowing report describing the thing charging a group of university fraternity members with a lead pipe in seemingly murderous intent. With all of the reports coming in of some possibly deranged psychopath prowling the area, the tunnels were thoroughly searched to find not a trace of what was being reported. In order to be safe, the tunnels were mostly sealed off from the outside world, but there are enough ways to get in for adventurous curiosity seekers, and there have supposedly been sightings of the Third Eye Man right up to the present. Considering that there is very little to verify these tales, there is the distinct possibility that this is all an urban legend, but I would still stay away from those tunnels if I were you. What is this bizarre abomination? Who knows? I like how he just kind of put "who knows" there at the end. I think I would literally be in a coma if I wasn't drinking that Monster Energy drink right now. A very strange account with some other sort of humanoid comes from 1978 in Toronto, Canada. Here, within the dark confines of the various networks of tunnels and caves under this sprawling metropolis, a 51-year-old man known only as Ernest had a strange and frightening encounter in August of that year. The witness claims that he had been out searching the neighborhood for a missing kitten from a litter he had been raising with his wife, when he had stumbled across a tunnel entrance and decided to get a flashlight and investigate where it led, perhaps to even find his missing cat in the process. He claims that he penetrated around 10 feet into the murk and suddenly came across a creature that looked somewhat like a long and thin monkey, around 3 feet in height, with large teeth and covered in gray fur. The unsettling eyes, which peered out of the darkness from deep sockets, were described as being bright orange and slanted, and to make the whole ordeal even more horrific, Ernest reported that the creature actually spoke to him. He would say of the odd events, quote, "I saw a living nightmare that I'll never forget. It said, 'Go away, in a hissing voice. Then it took off down a long tunnel off to the side. I got out of there as fast as I could. I was shaking with fear." End quote. That's pretty spooky. I feel like I've heard this story before. This entity, whatever it is, ghost, poltergeist, alien pranksters, it was making strange sounds. It was going to my neighbor's driveway. That's pretty creepy. What kinds of sounds was it making? Or could you describe them? Or are they indescribable sounds? Ernest would later grudgingly tell the Toronto Sun newspaper of his frightening experience after being encouraged by a friend to do so, and he refrained from giving his last name out of fear that he would be ridiculed. Staff from the Sun even went as far as to accompany Ernest to the location of his strange sighting in March of 1979, and they found that indeed there was the entrance to a cave at the end of a passageway between houses, which led into a narrow tunnel that dropped off into the gloom sharply and was surmised to lead to the unseen sewer system down below. When they had investigated the tunnel, they did not see any strange creature, but they did find the maimed carcass of a cat half buried in the ground. When sewer officials were questioned about what Ernest had perhaps seen, an employee gave the rather ominous statement. Quote, People who work on the surface just don't know what it's like down there. It's a whole different world. Who would have thought a few years ago that people would live in sewers, and yet that's what they found in New York a few years back. I don't know what he, Ernest, saw down there. I'll tell you one thing. If we could get in there, I sure as hell wouldn't want to go down alone. End quote. That was pretty unsettling. But again, I think I literally made a video that included that story one time. Interesting. The so-called Cabbagetown Tunnel monster is truly bizarre in that no other such report like it has come in, and it is hard to say what the creature in question could possibly be, especially considering that it allegedly actually spoke. Concerning the witness himself, friends and family said that he was an honest and reliable man, not prone to making up tall tales, and the Sun reporters who had interviewed him said that he seemed earnest and honestly scared and reluctant to tell his tale at the time. What did he see down there, if anything? We may never know. One idea of what the Cabbagetown Tunnel monster could have been was but rather some cryptid from above ground taking refuge or shelter within the tunnel. The region where it was sighted has long had accounts from the natives of a race of smallish, hairy humanoids that inhabited areas near waterways and were called the Memigwazi, and perhaps something like this could have found a home down in the tunnel. We will probably never know for sure. That is some unsettling stuff. Equally unsettling is how sleepy I'm becoming from my sleep deprivation. But screw it, we're doing this. I will sleep later. Another locale known for its mysterious tunnel and cave systems are the mysterious Superstition Mountains of Arizona, which, as I have written before, already have their fair share of weirdness to go around. One of the strangest phenomena reported from the remote area is that of reptilian humanoids said to reach immense sizes of up to 10 feet in height, and which dwell down in the murky catacombs below the earth, as well as numerous other odd encounters with things in the area's many gloomy mines, shafts, caves, and tunnels here. One very bizarre account of such beings was relayed to Lon Strickler of the site Phantoms and Monsters, by an individual who claimed to have encountered an individual who had been down in those caves and had quite the stories to tell about the tunnels. He would say, he spotted a mine entrance on the west side of the main mount side. He said that the mine looked to be in good shape, so he started walking in the shaft. He had gone about a half-mile in when he saw a sign that said no entrance beyond this point. The mine shaft was still in good shape, so he went in 100 yards. He told me that people seemed to come out of the walls of the shaft. Men in black uniforms questioned him and then took him to a holding area in Mesa, Arizona for 72 hours. They questioned him again and found out that his home was in Colorado. They gave him a plane ticket to Denver, Colorado, and told him never to come back to the Phoenix area. He asked me not to tell anyone that I had seen him. He wanted to pick up personal items that got left behind. I have never seen him after that. There are other stories of treasure hunters going into old mine shafts and finding holographic walls in the shaft. They did not try to enter the area behind the wall as they feared that they may not be able to get back out. They told me that they took a round rock and rolled it through the screen and heard it roll for some distance. One of them reached through the screen with a flashlight in his hand. He turned the flashlight back toward the screen, but could not see any light. He said that he withdrew his arm as he had the feeling that something was back there and he didn't want it to grab his arm and drag him in. I asked the men to take me up there and show me the mine. They all said no way they were going back in there. We got a topo map out and they showed me the area that they had encountered the wall. I did go into the area to search but was never able to find the mine. This is not strange as other people have found opening and marked. Wait, what is it saying? This is not strange, as other people have found openings and marked the entrance with a pyramid of large rocks and left to get lights and more people and equipment. When they got back, the rocks are still there as they had stacked them, but the entrance is gone. A similarly strange cave encounter was reported in 1966 by a witness named George D. White and a group of spelunkers who had been exploring at Blowing Cave, Arkansas. As they made their way through the claustrophobic passages in near total darkness, they allegedly spotted a faint glow coming from somewhere ahead of them. As they approached, they came to a very narrow passage through the solid rock, as well as what looked like a staircase going off into the darkness. According to a report on Phantoms and Monsters, he called to the others and they climbed through the opening. The tunnel expanded and they suddenly came into a large corridor, 20 by 20. The walls and the floors were smooth and the ceiling had a curved dome shape. Soon they encountered blue-skinned but otherwise human-like individuals. The strangers communicated with the witnesses, telling them that they had instruments that could measure people's emotions. They learned that the tunnels went on for miles. They were led to underground cities populated by entities that included serpent-like creatures and large hairy bipeds. Using an elevator-like device, they were taken to a glass-like city. Soon after this incident, White apparently returned to the cave and was never seen again. Very unsettling. You know what, guys? I'm going to turn some light on because my eyes are feeling sort of strained from the contrast, I think. Maybe if I also lower the brightness of my screen, maybe that'll help. Yes, I see we're blurry. There we go, that fixed it. Okay. In other cases, the underground monsters seem to resemble something more like Bigfoot, and there are several reports to this effect. One case, which is hard to categorize, originates in the rugged Cascade Mountains of Skycomish, Washington, where there is a long abandoned train tunnel called the Cascade Tunnel, where there reportedly dwells a hulking beast with shining yellow eyes. One account of this creature was written of in Brad Steger's book, Real Monsters, Gruesome Critters, and Beasts from the Dark Side, in which a witness called Dave tells of a frightening encounter within the tunnel. The witness says that he had gone to the tunnel to investigate the reports and take some photos, and that when he was about 40 feet in, he had seen the glowing yellow eyes of the creature himself, remarking that no normal animal's eyes shone like that. The eyes apparently belonged to an indistinct, massive, shadowy figure standing out in the dim murk that was reported as standing at least 9 feet tall. Startled, Dave fled to his truck in a panic, and as soon as he got in, he claims to have heard a loud metallic bang from the tunnel entrance, which was enough to send him roaring off in his vehicle. A few days later, Dave went back to the site with some other people who were curious as to what he had seen, and they would also see the yellow eyes peering from the darkness. None of them would ever go back. Was this a reptilian humanoid of some kind? Was it a Bigfoot using the tunnel as a shelter? Was it a ghost, spirit, or some other supernatural entity? Interestingly, there have been Bigfoot reports from that very same area, but the glowing eyes seen here seem to be a remarkable detail. Fascinating. I love how I'm drinking a monster while reading about monsters. Another beast in a similar vein is legend of what has come to be called orange eyes from the wilds of the area of Charles Mill Reservoir outside of Mansfield, Ohio. Beginning from the 1960s, numerous witnesses came forth with mind-boggling tales of encountering a beastly, enormous creature estimated as up to 11 feet tall, covered with filthy, matted hair, exuding an odoriferous stench, and possessing two large glowing orange eyes. The bizarre creature was most often said to roam about an area called Ruggles Road, which was a popular makeout place for young couples and also had the nickname Lover's Lane. Seems like it's always the place where lovers meet that are like sort of said to be haunted or allegedly haunted or whatever. So why they attracted to those areas, something about the energy. The monstrosity was known to terrorize those who came here, looming over vehicles menacingly or even rocking cars to the point that they threatened to tip over. One of the most spectacular reports of orange eyes comes from April of 1968, when a group of school kids spotted the creature and actually chased it with flashlights in hand, but it disappeared into the night. The story goes that this abomination spewed forth from the tunnels underneath Cleveland's Riverside Cemetery, driven out when its home was destroyed by construction work carried out there in the 1940s. Interestingly, the area of Charles Mill Lake has another cryptid that may or may not be related, in the form of an aquatic humanoid with no arms, luminous glowing eyes, and enormous webbed feet, which surged out from the water of the lake to frighten witnesses Denny Patterson, Wayne Armstrong, and Michael Lane in March of 1959. Authorities would later uncover tracks that resembled the footgear worn by skin divers, but the case has never been solved, and there is no reliable connection to the orange eyes phenomenon. What it was or where it came from is anyone's guess. We are left here with a plethora of truly bizarre cases that seem to evade and defy conventional understanding. Just what could any of these strange entities and beasts have been? Are these cryptids, ghosts, demons, or something altogether more mysterious still? Or are they just tall tales in urban legend? There is little we can do to unravel these mysteries, as most of these cases are fairly isolated and stand on their own, head held high upon the landscape of the world of the weird. Whatever they may be, the sprawling catacombs, tunnels, and caverns beneath our feet certainly hold plenty of strange tales, and serve to make us wonder at what may lie down there, ensconced within this eternal night of a world we rarely see. And that's the article. I would say that was very spooky, very mysterious, very unsettling. The site is called Mysterious Universe if you want to go read stuff like that for yourself. It's like my favorite place for looking up stuff like this. They've got all kinds of articles on there. So now the question is, where should we go from here? Because I was thinking of maybe just reading this article, then getting off and coming back later, but I think we need to do more than that. I think this live stream needs to go on. So if you're watching this when it's not live, fast forward a bit, because I'm just going to take a couple minutes or so to sort of relax my voice and see what other stuff I can find to read. So let's just see here. What's going on in the ghosts and haunting section? There's a lot of interesting stuff on here. It's kind of difficult to decide what to pick. So many ominous hauntings. But I think this sounds fairly interesting. The mysterious haunting of Borley Rectory. Am I lagging, or is that just my computer? I think it's my computer. Hopefully I can even stay awake enough to read another article, but I just enjoy being live too much to stop. So it's just gonna have to happen. Let me just scan this article first. Yeah, this looks to be of a pretty good length, and it looks enticing and spooky and creepy from what I can tell. So we're gonna read it. We are going to read it. All right, now. This is entitled The Mysterious Haunting of Borley Rectory, and this article is also by Brent Swanser of mysteriousuniverse.org. Amongst the verdant green landscape of a rural area of Essex near the east coast of England once sat the stately, Gothic-style brick building called Borley Rectory, built in 1863 by the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull, who would go on to live there with his family of 14. The area where the rectory was built already had a long and strange history dating back far before the house was constructed, as the land was said to have once been the site of a monastery in the 14th century, which itself already had a sinister cast to it. The local legend apparently was that a monk from the monastery had fallen in love with a nun from a nearby convent, and the two had had an illicit affair that was unfortunately discovered. Sorry guys, my fatigue's getting to me. That's the thing, when it's live, I can't edit this out. I can't edit out all my like freaking yawns and crap. Anyway. Let's see, where were we? The local legend apparently was that a monk from the monastery had fallen in love with a nun from a nearby convent, and the two had had an illicit affair that was unfortunately discovered, leading to the monk being hanged on the very spot where the rectory stood, and the nun bricked up alive within the walls of her convent. It is perhaps in this grim tale where the hauntings at Borley Rectory begin, which have launched it into its place as one of the most haunted places in the world. Practically as soon as Henry Bull had settled in with his family at the estate, they were allegedly besieged with strange phenomena. It began as anomalous noises such as footsteps when no one was there, the sound of rushing water, voices from nowhere, bells ringing on their own, even if their wires were cut, and moving objects, but it quickly escalated. The children began seeing the apparition of a frightening, ghostly nun lurking about on the property, and this strange entity was seen on several occasions by the family. The youngest daughter, Ethel, was also physically accosted by this unseen force, sometimes being pushed or slapped, often hard enough to leave welts. There was also supposedly a spectral horse-drawn coach driven by two headless phantoms that would tear through the area, and such strange ghostly phenomena would continue on into later years, even after Henry Bull died in 1892 to leave the house to his son, Harry Bull. You know what's funny about this, though, you guys? when I read stories like this for videos, weirdly enough, I actually do a far worse job at reading them than I do like right now when I'm reading them live, and like even being like super tired like this right now. Like for some reason, being live makes it like 100 times easier to read these and to read them well. Like when I'm not live, I end up like mispronouncing things or saying things wrong. I guess that's the same thing. I end up like just messing up in various ways and having to edit like a bunch of stuff together to make it sound right, and like repeating myself and stuff. And but while I'm live, that's like barely happening for some reason. So I find that interesting. But anyway, under Harry's watch, the haunting did not abate one bit, and there are several very strange accounts from his tenure there. On one occasion, Henry was out in his garden when his dog began barking uncontrollably for no discernible reason and cowering behind a tree. When Harry Bull went to investigate, he claimed he saw a headless body walk out from behind some bushes and walk off to board a ghostly coach before silently rolling out of there. Harry would have several encounters with this mysterious coach, which would typically rush past only to vanish into thin air. Of course, the spectral nun continued to be seen around the property, often wandering about in broad daylight, sometimes peering in through windows, to the point that Harry purportedly even blocked up the dining room window because their mealtimes were so often disrupted by her face leering in at them. Very spooky. Harry Bull would pass away in 1927, and the rectory would sit abandoned for some time before being moved into by Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife. They too immediately experienced the paranormal phenomena, such as roaming ghost lights, the apparition of the nun, the ghostly coach with its headless riders, shadow figures, and strange noises such as footsteps and bells. Most disturbingly of all, Smith's wife was cleaning out a cupboard one day when she found ensconced within a crumpled paper package, which when opened revealed the shocking sight of a human skull. There were also reported the sound of horse whispering, of I said that wrong. There were also reported the sound of hoarse whispering and someone plodding about the house, to the point that Smith took to carrying a stick around with him to fend off whatever it was. These spooky occurrences were unsettling enough that they reached out to the newspaper The Daily Mirror in 1929, and the paper would send in paranormal researcher Harry Price and his team. Upon his arrival, Price soon experienced these occurrences for himself, and they seemed to become even more intense in nature. During his investigation, he would report that he had seen objects fly through the air, stones or other objects thrown by some invisible force, and cryptic messages tapped out on a mirror. On another occasion, Price and his assistant claimed that a glass candlestick had hovered in the air by their heads and smashed itself against the wall to send shards showering everywhere. He also claimed to have seen the apparitions of the nun, the headless coach drivers, and even the ghost of Henry Bull himself, and they even managed to allegedly photograph an apparition. Yet many of these phenomena Price spoke of were not witnessed by the Smiths themselves, and they would later doubt that some of it had ever really happened at all. Nevertheless, they had experienced enough paranormal phenomena of their own that they ended up moving out of the rectory in 1929, less than a year after moving in. Price would report on what he had seen in the papers, and this is when the story of Borley Rectory would hit the public consciousness. The next tenants of what Price had dubbed the most haunted house in England were Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister, who was a cousin of the original owner Henry Bull, along with his wife Mary Ann and their adopted daughter Adelaide, who moved in 1930. They apparently inherited the haunting along with the house, as they were also assailed with all sorts of strange happenings. Amongst the myriad high strangeness they encountered were thrown rocks, glasses, bottles, and other objects, windows that shattered for no reason, doors that locked people out of the rooms, moving furniture, vanishing or appearing objects, and of course the sounds of bells, heavy breathing, footsteps, and others. Most frightening of all was that whatever the sinister force was seemed to target Marianne the most, and she would often be pushed, prodded, and slapped by unseen hands, as well as be the direct target of flung objects. At one point, she awoke in her darkened room to the entity trying to suffocate her with a mattress, and this was all followed by a series of cryptic messages that would be scrawled upon the walls, saying things such as, "Marianne, please get help," and "Marianne, light mass prayers." At other times, she claimed that she had been thrown from the bed or held down by an invisible force, all of which convinced Foister to attempt exorcisms on 2 separate occasions by himself, neither of which worked and which only seemed to antagonize the spirit, which hurled fist-sized stones at him throughout. Interestingly, Marianne would also claim to have seen the spectral apparition of Bull. Many paranormal researchers who were following the now well-known story at the time speculated that the poltergeist activity was being projected by either Marianne herself or their daughter, but it was difficult to know for sure. And so when the Foisters moved out in 1935, Price was ready to go back in and pick up from where he left off. This time, Price went in with state-of-the-art ghost hunting equipment and went about a massive recruiting process to collect a group of 48 others to join him on his expedition and take turns camping out on the premises. This time, he also planned to live there for a year in order to fully document all of the strangeness on offer, and it was all a rather ambitious ghost hunting venture indeed. During the year they spent investigating the property, the team would claim some rather spectacular results, not the least of which was a seance that they purportedly held one evening. During this seance, the psychic medium Helen Glanville supposedly made contact with a spirit that called itself Marie Laire. I don't know the pronunciation. With a spirit that called itself, let's just say, Marie Laire, and which claimed to have once been a nun in France. The spirit supposedly claimed that she had left her convent to travel to England and marry a wealthy man named Henry Waldegrave, after which she had been strangled by her husband and left to rot in the cellar of the rectory. It was this spirit who had reached out to Marianne for help. Glanville contacted another spirit as well, this time a male who identified himself as Sunex Amares, who was a bit more sinister in that he proclaimed that he would burn the whole structure down in 1938, and that in its ashes, the corpse of a murdered man would be found. The team also witnessed numerous poltergeist activity, inexplicable cold spots, strange inhuman footprints left behind in the snow, and also purportedly the apparition of the nun. Price would compile all of this research into 2 books, The Most Haunted House in England, 1940, and The End of Borley Rectory, 1946. Perhaps in a twist of fate, true to the spirit of Amare's word, in 1939, just about on schedule, the new owner of the rectory, Captain W.H. Gregson, dropped an oil lamp and set the entire place ablaze. In the ensuing conflagration, the manor was badly damaged, and in later years, in 1943, Price would claim to have been snooping around in the cellar of the charred husk when he found the remains of what were determined to have been that of a young woman, although others doubted that they were human at all. Weird things would occur in the area of the abandoned, fire-gutted rectory in the years after, such as the sounds of ghostly laughter, mysterious lights, electrical equipment malfunctioning, sightings of the ghostly nun, and reports from people, including World War II soldiers operating in the area, who said that some unseen party had flung stones at them. This would all go on until the rectory was finally demolished in 1944, and from there the reports of paranormal strangeness sort of peter out, and with the death of Price in 1948, the whole thing has sort of been lost to history. In the ensuing years, the case of the haunted Borley Rectory has been faced with more than its fair share of criticism. Price's original report was met with much skepticism by the Society for Psychical Research, SPR, when it first came out, and this was a society dedicated to the paranormal. They argue that many of the sightings were either caused by natural phenomena, exaggerated, or even straight up fabricated by Price. And just after his death in 1948, a reporter for the Daily Mail, who had been with Price at the time of his investigation, came forward to accuse him of making up and faking the whole thing. Further damning the whole thing was testimony by none other than Marianne Foister herself, who would admit that it had all been a hoax. In 2000, there was a book written by Louis Merling, and rather straightforwardly called "We Faked the Ghosts of Borley Rectory," which alleges that the Bowles and Foyers, as well as Price and his team, were all a bunch of hoaxers and showmen who had concocted the whole thing. Regardless of the skepticism, there are plenty of people who have defended the case as genuine, and it does seem odd that all of these parties would be able to so carefully orchestrate such a hoax over the course of decades. A lot of witnesses have also argued that many of the phenomena could not have been faked, and of course this has all been enough cause to make sure that the strange case of the haunting at Borley Rectory remains a classic haunting that is still discussed and debated to this day. What happened there? And indeed, did anything happen there at all? Or is this all a long-running urban legend perpetuated by fraudsters? Considering that all of the main witnesses and researchers of the phenomena are dead, and that the rectory itself is long gone, it seems as if it is yet another mystery doomed to remain in the limbo of speculation and discussion. How mysterious. Well, my view counter currently says there's no one watching this time. I did have viewers, but they left. So I'm wondering if maybe reading paranormal stories is not the most interesting subject for a stream. I don't know. This is only like the second time I've really done this. For a stream, that is, I mean. Obviously, I've done it countless times in regular videos. But nonetheless, I'm going to stick with the theme, and this will just save to my channel, and we'll see how many views it gets on there. We'll see if people like it. If enough people like it, I'll make more streams like this. Or maybe even, I don't know, find some other kind of scary content to talk about on stream. So that was pretty spooky. I enjoyed that. Let's see what else we have here. Let's see, the strange case of the Ghost Watch Panic. Let me just read over that real quick and see if it looks ideal to read live here. Also gonna check on the stream real quick, make sure it looks good. Looks like I lost a subscriber. I lose subscribers every time I go live, basically. But I also gain subscribers back at the rate that I lose them, so I guess that's a good thing. Alright, the stream sounds good. Give it a like my own stream. Yeah, if you're watching this when it's not live, just feel free to fast forward a bit. Gonna sort of give my voice time to rest while I look for something else to read. Let's see here. And of course, since this is called Reading Creepy Paranormal Monster Encounters, maybe I should in fact go to the cryptozoology section. Let's take a look here. Exploring Canadian Monsters, Quebec. Sounds kind of interesting. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, I've definitely figured out by now that I get more viewers later in the day, like in the evenings, but I still want to go live regardless and read this stuff. Besides, nice thing about something like this is if people enjoy hearing me read these scary stories, they can always listen back when the video saves to my channel. Exploring Canadian Monsters, Quebec. Then again, are these encounters, or are they just talking about the monsters themselves? I'm trying to see here. Wait a second, what do we have here? I've noticed before my subscribers seem to like werewolf and dogman stories, and apparently there's one within this article about that, so why don't we just cut to the chase, something more interesting, or that more people seem to find the most interesting, and go with this. So this is excerpted from Exploring Canadian Monsters, Quebec by Jason Offit of MysteriousUniverse.org. All right, and this section is called Loup Garou. Hunters and trappers beware. Stalking the deep forests of the province may be a shape-shifting monster that sometimes walks the earth as a man and other times in the form of a wolf. Per a story on the CBC, in the early days of Canada, a man named Leo, or I guess it's just his first name, I don't know. Or maybe it's his last name, but whatever. A man named Leo camped with men he did not know, Andre and Hubert Savago. While Savago went off into the trees, a werewolf, a loup-garou, thundered into the camp and attacked Leo. Reacting swiftly, Andre threw his good luck charm at the monster, which cut the beast's head. The loup-garou's body thrashed and changed before them, turning from a human-like wolf into Savago. Andre's attack apparently freed Savago from the loup-garou curse. That's weird, to the point that it made me literally just stop reading just now and contemplate that. Okay, whatever. Forests weren't the only places to be mindful of attacks. In the mid-1700s, people wandering Quebec City streets were also warned to be on their guard. Accounts of a loup-garou terrorizing the province began in July 1766 and lasted until December 1767. The 21st July 1766 Quebec Gazette reported a beggar seen in the Saint-Roch neighborhood who would attempt to persuade passers-by to follow him, only to transform into an animal and attack. This beast is said to be as dangerous as that which appeared last year in the county of Gévaudan. Wherefore it is recommended to the public to be as cautious of him as it would be of a ravenous wolf, as per the newspaper account. The Quebec Gazette reported on 11th December of that year the beggar-turned-wolfman also caused mischief in the nearby town of Kamouraska. Beware then of the wiles of this malicious beast, and take good care of falling into its claws, per the newspaper account. That's spooky stuff. It really is. Well, since no one is here right now, this is the perfect time for me to take a little bathroom break. Be right back. And I have returned. So, I think since my voice is dying and I'm half asleep, and I really need to eat something, which is just messing me up even more, I think at this point, rather than reading more, I'm going to sort of give my perspective on these strange creature encounters and what I think they might be about, to the best of my ability from my sort of tainted state right now. And then I'm probably gonna get off of here and get something to eat, maybe get a nap, like I mentioned earlier. And I'm really gonna try to come back later with more stuff when I'm more like refreshed, because I definitely want to enjoy doing that. So all of these weird creature encounters, these weird stories and whatnot, what do I think that they are, or what do I think they might be? Well, when we consider that what is most likely taking place with all of us is that we are shifting from realities perhaps as many, or perhaps as frequently as billions of times per second, and that what we're all actually experiencing is our own individual series of parallel realities that are determined by the choices we make, the thoughts we think, all kinds of stuff, by the vibration we're in, essentially. I think that, and I've said this before, but I'm saying it again for people who haven't heard about this, I think that the human race collectively experiences a generalized series of parallel realities, and I think that there are, I almost see it as like an island of sorts, with parallel realities closer to the center of the island being much more ordinary stuff, and parallel realities far away from the center of the island, towards the edge of the island, where there are fewer people going, being the stranger experiences, the stranger things happen there. And so what I think is happening when people have these weird monster encounters, if they are in fact real, is I think that they are, by the vibration that they are in, for whatever reason, tuning into some of these realities, these fringe parallel realities, and they're seeing things that aren't normally encountered. And I wouldn't say aren't normally there, because in the strange realities or stranger realities that they tune into, those things are always there. In fact, they're constantly there. In fact, they cannot be other than there, right there. And so I think that's what's happening, and I think that's why many people have never seen these sorts of anomalies, and probably never will see these sort of anomalies, because they don't tune into those realities to begin with. You know, they're not vibrationally predisposed to it, and they have no intention of wandering into that territory. Now, some people will hear this and they'll say, oh, but there's people, you hear it somewhat frequently perhaps, people who say that they never heard anything about weird creatures, they never heard anything about the paranormal, they didn't believe this, they didn't believe that, and they still had an experience. Well, I say that still doesn't contradict this theory, because there's any number of things that theoretically can put you in the vibration that makes you a match to these sort of strange realities, these fringe parallel realities, where strange creatures like dogmen and sewer monsters we were reading about, you name it, Bigfoot, Loch Ness, whatever, Loch Ness monster, where these sorts of things exist, and I think that's how we can simultaneously have accounts that sound so convincing from so many people, and yet there's this sort of, almost, no offense to those people, but like absurdity factor, where so many people it just sounds so impossible. And it could very well be that for those people who truly